On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to the Locked On Blues podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network and your number one source for daily Blues content. I'm Josh Hyman and I'm taking you guys on a solo episode today to make sure we got time to preview for the big matchup versus the LA Kings tonight, but there is so much to talk about. Going to be getting into the Blues 4-0 undefeated start, what it means for the rest of the season, talking about Craig Berube's future with the St. Louis Blues, talking about Scott Perunovich winning AHL Player of the Week with his hot start, and finally previewing tonight's matchup against the LA Kings. It's going to be an action-packed episode, but before we start, I want to thank all you guys who are listening to this tomorrow morning on your way to work or whatever it may be. Thank you guys so much for making us your first listen. That's our goal with these quick, easy 20-minute episodes, is to be the first listen of the day. That way you guys can have a quick daily bite of Blues content. But without further ado, I wanted to actually get into not necessarily a controversy, but a bit of an interesting tweet that I saw that didn't get talked about a lot. Apologies as I pull it up here. Is a tweet that was quoting from 32 Thoughts from Merrick. And he said, talking about Jim Montgomery, Montgomery is on the bench right now with the St. Louis Blues. There's some speculation, and I've had people talk to me and have said that he is the next head coach of the St. Louis Blues. Obviously, 4 games into an undefeated season, wasn't necessarily anticipating talking about potential future coaching change, but with a tweet like that coming across the timeline, I think it's difficult to ignore the possibility of Berube's time being limited in St. Louis. I don't think, as JTAP says in chat, I don't think he's going to be fired after a 4-0 start. I don't think that was what the indication was, saying Jim Montgomery is the next head coach of the St. Louis Blues. But Craig Berube does have a contract that expires after next season, I believe. And I do think that there is a bit of a gap between the current talent, the young talent on this roster, and the play style of Craig Berube. Whether that is after his contract, whether that presents itself later in the regular season and it becomes apparent that there's a coaching change needed. It does seem like there's a bit of speculation amongst reporters, maybe even in the Blues organization, that they sort of already have a replacement in mind in Montgomery, having him on the bench. Sort of seems like they're maybe planning on transitioning to him from Berube at some point, whether, like JTAP says in chat, thanks for all the chats. You make these episodes go by so much easier. And if you guys want to hop into chat, ask questions as well, make sure you join the YouTube live streams. But anyways, whether or not he ends the season with the Blues or not, it does seem like Berube's time could be limited. Not necessarily as a knock on his coaching ability, but I do think if you look at the future of this team, looking at the roster, looking at some of the names, the Jordan Kyrous, the Robert Thomases of the world, they're not exactly players that fit into Craig Berube's mold. Those are the Ryan O'Reillys, the David Perrons, the two-ways, the grinders, which the league is sort of moving away from that play style. So if the speculation is true and the Blues do already have a replacement coach in mind for whenever they move on from Craig Berube, it in my opinion, at least for now, doesn't necessarily seem like a knock on Berube's ability to lead the St. Louis Blues, and more so just acknowledging that the dynamic of the league is changing and the physicality and two-way play that won the Blues a Stanley Cup isn't necessarily what it takes to win a cup anymore, and it's more about depth and forward depth and forward skill. But that being said, this is a perfect opportunity to transition into the forward depth of the St. Louis Blues this season, because oh baby, has it been fun to watch this offense. I feel like I've been waiting for a 5.5 goal per game offense since I started watching the Blues. Obviously, it's not going to sustain itself. They're not going to be putting up 5 goals a game for the remainder of the regular season. But I don't remember what the exact stat was, but I'm pretty sure it was like all but 4 players on the Blues got a point in the 7-3 win over the Kings, something like that. So it's been fun to watch, and until that flourish, or until that dies out, there's no reason to believe that Craig Ruby can't lead this offense. So I don't think that it's a knock, again, not a knock on his coaching. The defense has been questionable. The defense has been suspect, which is more of his strength, which is a little concerning that the defense is the area that is lacking for the St. Louis Blues. But the offense has been more than successful enough to carry this team, and it's allowed the defense to be confident and sort of make mistakes and not have it kill them like it has in the past. They've had turnovers and they've had lapses that have led to goals, but it's not like years in the past where the Blues have only been able to muster 2-3 goals a night and one defensive lapse can cost you the game. When the Blues are making defensive lapses, they're already up 7-1, so it doesn't matter. Not sustainable over a full season, obviously, but it's wonderful to start like this. Last night you see Jake Neighbor, or last game you see a guy like Jake Neighbor getting involved, getting his first NHL goal. Vladimir Tarasenko getting involved as well, continuing to have a strong start for the St. Louis Blues. It's been so much to like about this offense, and obviously the question now comes, is the defense able to match that capability and match that that ability? And right now, I think the answer is no. I think the defense has been poor, but I don't think that means that it's going to be poor for the rest of the season. The second segment, I'm going to be getting into what I think could be the answer for the St. Louis Blues if it's an in-house move, and that is Scott Perunovich, as MCAG says in chat. With Perunovich off to a hot start, does he get called up? If so, when? That is going to be the subject of the second segment of today's episode. But before we get into that, I want to tell you guys about DirecTV Stream. Now, does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you got your neighbor's best friend's login for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all the TV you love without the hassle. Great way to get TV together, and it is called DirecTV Stream. DirecTV Stream brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there is no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device requires. Content varies by package. And when we return, I'm going to be getting into Scott Perunovich, his hot start, and debating the title of this episode, at least on YouTube. Is Scott Perunovich the best player in the NHL? And when will he translate that talent to the NHL? So don't go anywhere. All right. So before the break, MCAG in the YouTube chat asked a perfect question. With Perunovich off to a hot start in the AHL, does he get called up? And if so, when? Now, if you guys haven't been following the Blues AHL fleet this season, then you've been missing out on a fun little prospect named Scott Perunovich, absolutely taking the league by storm with 9 points in his first 5 games, winning AHL Player of the Week. And keep in mind, he's putting up 9 points in 5 games as a defenseman. We all knew Scott Perunovich was going to be a great offensive defenseman, a great power play quarterback, and we knew that he was going to look great in the AHL, but I don't think any of us, myself included, expected him to look this good. And the title of this episode is Scott Perunovich, the best player in the AHL. That's not clickbait. That's not exaggeration. There is a legitimate chance that at this moment in time, Scott Perunovich is pretty clearly the best player in the AHL. Watching the highlights, watching extended clips from his games, he truly looks like he's just head and shoulders above the competition out there. It looks like the game is just moving slower for him than it is any other person on the ice, and that is why he's able to rack up these point totals and win AHL Player of the Week. What a great way to start the season for him. Couldn't imagine a better start. And this was part of the argument of why it may be better off for him to start down in the AHL, just so he can build up that confidence playing on the first line rather than coming in and getting third pairing, maybe second pairing minutes for the Blues, and not really able to get his confidence going, not really able to get his sea legs under him in terms of playing at full game speed. Now that we've been able to see 5 games of AHL performance from Scott Perunovich, it's pretty clear that he's probably NHL ready at his current state. There's definitely some depth, not issues, but there's definitely some competition for the spot that he would eventually take. It's difficult to say who comes out if you call him up. Let's say for tonight's game, obviously that's not happening. But hypothetically, looking at the defensive pairings right now, it's even though the defense has been poor, it's not just the easiest question to say, oh yeah, you put him here, you take Scandella out. Well, no, because even though Scandella hasn't been anything special, he's still been one of your better defensive defensemen. Oh, you take Bortuzzo out. Well, then you're forcing Perunovich to play on his offhand, and also Bortuzzo has been one of your better defensive defensemen. So it's not like an immediate fix for the Blues. I don't think that they're going to be calling him up this week and that's going to be the defense for the rest of the season. But if he continues to play at this torrid pace and tear up the AHL and make guys look silly out there, the Blues are going to have no choice but to call him up. And that is a good problem to have. If Scott Perunovich plays his way into a spot, regardless of whether or not the depth chart allows it, that's a good problem to have because that means he's ready, regardless of who's on the depth chart above him. He could come up and get power play time. Second pairing time, who knows? It's obviously purely speculation, but it is a good problem to have. The Blues keep getting richer in terms of their depth, and defensive depth is the biggest concern right now. And Scott Perunovich playing the way that he's playing is huge for that. That being said, he is more of an offensive defenseman, and the Blues don't really need more offense at the moment. So that could be sort of the flip side of the Perunovich argument is the last thing you really need right now is to take out, a potentially helpful defensive defenseman and replace him with an undersized offensive defenseman because then the defensive woes are just going to get worse. And that's totally legitimate. And that's sort of my reasoning behind not necessarily it being in any rush to call Perunovich up. I don't think that bringing him up, for example, if you bring him up for tonight's game against the Kings, obviously not going to happen. But if that were to be the case, if I woke up this morning and Luke Korak tweeted that Scott Perunovich had been called up to the AHL or the NHL, as much as I would be excited, as much as I would be, I can't wait to watch him, play for the Blues, I don't think that solves the problems that the Blues are having. Like JTAP says in chat, we need a Bouwmeester, he says. I think that's the perfect way to describe it. As much as Perunovich would help this offense and probably lead them to continue to put up 7 goals on teams like the LA Kings, every once in a while, the offense is going to run dry, and you're going to need guys that really can shut the opponent down. And Scott Perunovich is not that. And that's just not the type of player he is. That's no criticism of him. That's no criticism of his game whatsoever. But at the end of the day, right now, if you're bringing in one guy to fix the St. Louis Blues, it's a defensive defenseman. And maybe that's Nico Mikkola, but in-house, I don't know if the Blues have a solution, unless it's just a matter of their defense kind of playing a little bit more cohesively and stepping up a little bit more. But at the moment, Scott Perunovich isn't the solution to that problem. That being said, you don't necessarily just have to call Scott Perunovich up because you need to fill a hole. You can call Scott Perunovich up because he's really, really good at hockey. We've seen it with Cale Makars, the Quinn Hughes, 5'9" to 6 feet defensemen who can skate their tails off and move the puck around like a forward are a hot commodity in this league and can make any team go from a pretty good offensive team to an absolute juggernaut. And maybe if in 5 to 10 games the offense slows down a little bit, the offense dies out, and they're not putting up 5.5 goals a game, and the defense is still struggling a little bit, and they need an injection of offense back into this team, who better to call up than Scott Perunovich? Because at some point this season, the offense will be an issue. That's just how a hockey season works. Over 82 games, certain elements of your system are going to flourish. Certain elements are going to fail. There's going to be games when the defense is firing on all cylinders and the offense can't be found. There's going to be games when the offense is firing all cylinders and the defense can't be found. There's going to be games when every single part of the Blues system is working perfectly and they blow a team out of the water and they look like they're ready to win a Stanley Cup. And then the very next game, nothing will be working. The defense is a mess, the offense is a mess, the goaltending is a mess, and they'll lose 6-0. That is the trend of a hockey season. That's just how it goes. So when we get to the inevitable stretch of games where the offense goes cold and the defense is still looking a little suspect, then you call up Scott Perunovich. Then you say, all right, we need a little boost in our offense. Blank defenseman isn't playing well lately. Scott Perunovich is. Let's call him up. Let's insert him into the lineup. But right now, that's not their primary focus. So Scott Perunovich gets to continue to tear it up in the AHL for the time being, which is awesome. I love seeing those highlights. I love catching up on the Springfield Thunderbirds and seeing who Scott Perunovich is embarrassing on any given night. And that's just what we're gonna have to wait through for now. We're gonna have to be patient. I don't think we're gonna be seeing Scott Perunovich this week, but it could be next week. It could be the week after that. Who knows? He will play for the Blues at some point this season. I'm confident in that. But I think it'll be at a time when the defense maybe fixes itself a little bit more, and they can afford to put a little more offensive focus into the defensive side of things. And also when the offense itself is struggling rather than the defense. But right now, I think it would be a lateral move. I think it would help the offense that doesn't really need helping, and it could only really hurt the defense at the moment. So Scott Perunovich, I think, is perfectly fine where he is in the AHL right now, but that could be very temporary. I'm looking forward to seeing him continue to light up the AHL and then at some point light up the NHL. But for the time being, I can be patient. I can wait because, like I said, it's a good problem to have. Now, we are reaching for the last segment, and I'm going to be talking all about the upcoming matchup between the St. Louis Blues and LA Kings, a rematch of the last game where the Blues won 7-3. Buchnevich is coming back to the lineup. Ville Husso is making his season debut. Lots to talk about. But before we get into that, got to talk to you guys about our good friends over at Built Bar. Did you know that Built Bar has so many delicious flavors? There is something for everyone. When you talk to a Built Bar fan, they're definitely passionate about their faves. If you don't know the Built Bar flavors, well, you're definitely missing out. You got coconut, cherry barcia, raspberry, mint brownie, double chocolate, salted caramel, strawberry, orange, cookies and cream, and German chocolate. If you haven't tried all the flavors, you can get yourself a mix box where you'll get 2 of each of the 9 flavors. Not only are Built Bar flavors the best tasting, but they're healthy too. Each bar, you're getting 17 to 18 grams of protein, calories ranging from 130 to 180, only 4 to 5 grams of sugar, and only 4 to 5 grams of net carbs. Amazing flavors, all tasty, all healthy. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. And when we return, I'll be getting into tonight's matchup between the St. Louis Blues and LA Kings, picking my locked-on player of the game and more, so don't go anywhere. All right. Final segment, Monday episode, first episode of the week. Big game tonight, debut of Ville Husso. But first, my pick for locked on player of the game. I guess that comes with a little bit of lead up, and that has to do with Ville Husso being the starter for the St. Louis Blues. Now, the last time we played the LA Kings was just a few days ago, and we put up a 7 spot on them, a touchdown from the St. Louis Blues. The offense was once again dominant as it has been seemingly all season. But now tonight, a little bit of a different look. Pavel Buchnevich is back in the lineup, and Ville Husso is between the pipes for the St. Louis Blues. And I'm not worried. I'm very, very intrigued by how tonight's game is going to go because, as we talked about last week, the goaltender is the heart and soul of a team, and how much a team trusts their goalie is dependent on, or it will lead to how hard they play in front of them. So are we going to be seeing a completely different Blues team in terms of effort tonight? Maybe. That's definitely something that they've been guilty of in the past. We've seen a lot of Blues teams where the starting goalie or even the backup goalie, when Jake Allen was the backup, we've seen a lot of times when the Blues will rally in front of one of their goalies, but then leave the other one hung out to dry and really struggle in those games. We saw that with Ville Husso last year. I think him being a rookie was difficult. I think that there was reason why the team sort of had a little bit of lack of trust in him. He definitely struggled at times, especially early in games, giving up a lot of goals on like the first or second shots of the game. But that being said, you could see it in the team as well. You could see that those early goals when Husso was in net were a lot more demoralizing than the early goals when Binnington was in net. So I'm very curious tonight to see, especially if the offense doesn't put up 7 goals, which they're probably not going to. Maybe they will, and maybe I'll look silly. That'd be great. But there's much more likely that it's going to be 2 or 3 or 4, like most NHL games. And Husso is also probably going to not be as good as Jordan Binnington because he is the backup goalie. So it's going to be very interesting to see whether or not the Blues are able to rally in front of him. And that being said, my pick for locked on player of the game is a guy that I think has looked really, really good this season and is sort of just one step away from reinstilling the fan base's confidence in him. And that is Colton Parayko. I think the bright spots of this defense have been oftentimes a result of Colton Parayko and his play. He looks fast. He looks confident. He looks strong out there, a lot better than he did last season when he was dealing with his injury. I still think he's looking a little hesitant at times, and not as great as he could be. But I do think tonight is going to be the first test where the defense is going to be leaned on a little bit more than they have in any other game with Ville Husso in net. They're going to have to work a little bit harder to prevent those high danger scoring chances because Ville Husso isn't as good as Jordan Binnington at robbing the opponents on those high danger chances that we see Jordan Binnington sprawl out to make so many times. But if Parayko is able to anchor the defense tonight and allow Ville Husso to be comfortable early, especially early on, because we saw it so much last year. Ville Husso gave up goals on the first, second, third shots of the game. If early on Husso can settle in, and that is a result of Colton Parayko and the defense playing strong, playing consistent, and just keeping the LA Kings away from the slot and keeping them away from the middle of the ice and high danger scoring chances, then Ville Husso will be able to have a strong game. But that starts from puck drop, and that starts with the defense. And the defense starts with Colton Parayko. So if Colton Parayko is able to have a strong game tonight, it will have a domino effect, leading to Ville Husso playing stronger in the cage, leading to the rest of the team playing more confident in front of him. And if the Blues can continue their success this season and also have two reliable goaltenders in Jordan Binnington and Ville Husso, this is going to be a really, really fun season to watch because this team looks really strong. And the one question mark that we haven't seen yet is backup goaltending. Is Ville Husso. Will we be able to win 15 of his 25 starts? Or will we be relying on Jordan Binnington to get us the majority of the wins? All those questions and more are going to be answered tonight. But I do think that's all the time we have today. So thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you to JTap, MCAG, and anyone else who is in the YouTube watching and commenting. It makes these episodes so much more fun with this fan engagement, gives me topics to talk about, helps me transition better. I can't rave about it enough. Means the world to me and Tommy when he's on here as well. So if you guys want to join in on that, make sure you follow us on Twitter and subscribe to us on YouTube, because whenever we go live, if you're subscribed to us, you get a notification on YouTube, and we tweet about it as well. That way you can be like JTap and MCAG, ask us questions, hear them read live on the pod and live on YouTube. But yeah, make sure you follow us on Twitter, Locked On Blues, like I said. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, at Locked On Blues. Follow me on Twitter, at Josh Hyman NHL. Follow Tommy on Twitter, at TWelcher15. Thank you all so much for listening, and as always,